when I was a boy in the neighborhood kids used to all get together and meet in a common location. I was young and I wanted to be liked by the athletic. I was a little awkward at this age, a little overweight, introverted, and non-athletic. All of these traits came later. When I was a sophomore or so, the problem was when it came time to choose teams and to choose, in my mind, friends, the most athletic of the group usually chose others until I was the last one to be selected. With each demoralizing pick, I realized just how awkward I was. It wasn't always like this. I tell you, when I was a sophomore, a junior, and a senior, I was one of the most popular kids in school. But at this point in my life, I was just plain awkward and out of place. It didn't help that I had no brothers or sisters to help me navigate through the puberty stages of my life. It didn't help that with each choice that someone made, it was a demoralizing defeat to my self-esteem. You know, when I think of this part of my life, I think of one of the more popular stories in Judges. In fact, the book of Judges seems to be full of unlikely heroes. Jephthah, the son of a prostitute. Samson, the arrogant, dishonoring, blasphemous, prideful, and led by the flesh judge. Deborah, a woman brought up to lead a male army. All unlikely heroes of the Israelite people. These people, if put before the people by physical attributes, their genealogy, or their family name, or their character, would have been the most unlikely forces of a redeeming leader. Or what about Gideon, whose original name was Jerubbaal, which literally means, let the devil persecute him. Can you imagine growing up in a village of Wiccans and your name meaning, let the devil destroy you? Yes, all these leaders had the odds stacked against them. This wall of obstacle reigning so high above them. I fear my little story about my awkwardness as a child is nothing compared to growing up with the name of the devil in my name, or having a prostitute mother, or being a woman in the time period where women had less value and worth and rights than a male child of 12 years old. I know oftentimes we look at the miracles of God in these stories as showing the foreign armies just how powerful God is. And this is true to a degree. But most of these miracles were to prove to his own people, a flaky and idolatrous people, to prove to his own people that he was God. Hear the scriptures in Judges 7, 1 through 8. Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people were with him, rose early and camped beside the spring of Harod. And the camp of Midian was on the north side of them on the hill of Moreh in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, the people who are with you are way too many. They're too many for me to give Midian into their hands. For you would become boastful, saying, my own power has delivered me. Now therefore come and proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, whoever is afraid, trembling, let him return and depart from Mount Gilead. So 22,000 people returned, but only 10,000 remained. Then the Lord said to Gideon, the people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them. Therefore it shall be that he of you, I say to you, this one shall go with you. He shall go with you. But every one of whom I say to you, this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, you shall separate everyone who laps up the water with his tongue as a dog laps, as well as everyone who kneels down to drink. Now the number of those who lapped, putting their hands to their mouth, was 300 men. But all the rest kneeled to drink. And the Lord said to Gideon, I will deliver you with the 300 men who lapped, and will give the Midianites into your hands. So let all the other people go, each man to his house. So the 300 men took the people's provisions and their trumpets into their hands, and Gideon sent all the other men of Israel away, each to his own tent, but retained 300 men. And the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. Family, I want you to know there was no way for the other army to know that the 300 were picked by how they drank water. These were chosen for Gideon's benefit, not the foreign army. Some commentators try to compare Gideon's 300 to the Spartan army of 300, simply because it was the same number. But this is simply a very bad comparison. The Spartans were a warrior society, trained from birth to fight. This test of the water shows that these men that were chosen in Gideon's army were not soldiers at all. You see, the men that were chosen already said they were not afraid to go and fight. And many a seasoned soldier would kneel at a body of water, so he was prepared to defend himself. There is a certain amount of dignity to kneel rather than laying prostrate and scooping water with your hand and licking it like a dog. So we can deduce that these men were not seasoned soldiers. They were not officers in the army that would need to portray some form of dignity. Only those that kneeled would have been expressing that form of dignity and honor. No, these 300 were the ruffians of the group. But something else we can deduce is that they were truly not afraid. They truly weren't afraid to die. They weren't even alert, for they did not kneel. They simply believed that God would deliver them. However, for Gideon, this group of ragtag farmers dressed in war garments, lapping up water like dogs, this scene must have been a very disturbing one. He probably in many ways believed that he was going to die and his nation was going to be destroyed. This is why God sends him down to listen to the army, to hear their grumblings. Why does God send such leaders to defend his people? Because the only requirement for being God's soldiers are believing and obedience. The problem with today's churches is that they are filled up with soldiers that neither believe or are obedient. Yes, many who claim to be Christian are Christian in name only. There's no transformed life, no leaning entirely on God, on the cross, on the risen Savior. There's only an idea of what I can individually get out of Christianity rather than what I can give to the cause of Christ. Yet I think back to when I was not chosen by men because of my physical attributes, or the fact that I had no brothers or sisters, or that I had a family that was intimidating to others. I think about the times when everything that I had did not look positive to humanity. But I was a vessel God wants to use for His glory, to empower my faith and to empower your faith. God has always had a particular interest in the weak to confound the wise. And though I am not weak or peculiar today, I always remember the time when I was an oddity in the eyes of man. I tell you, even today, I'm an oddity in the eyes of man. But today, I like it that way. Because it exposes that I am set apart to be used by the will of God. Gideon's men were the dog soldiers, the dirty, the down and out, the ones that had nothing to live for, and found value in following this judge with the name, "Let the devil persecute." These nomadic Bedouins going against a trained army 10 times their size. The utter impossibility of it all is outstanding. It warps the mind to think about how these 300 would go against so many in a walled city. These men had no names for history to define, no family lineage that made them noticeable, no battle experience that made them stand out. They simply were unafraid and obedient. Today, I think about the calling to holiness in the same way. It is not based on some past you might have. In fact, many of us have a past. A past that so causes us to run from those things that so gripped us when we were young. A past that may have been full of sin. A past that thoroughly disgusts our hearts today. Yes, your past, it does not matter, but your present does. Your present means everything, and your present determines your future and your eternality. It was not the past that determined these soldiers of victory. It was not my past rejection from man that determined my current acceptance of Christ. And it is not your past, whether good or bad, that determines your standing with Christ. It is always, every time, your present that matters. I have heard many churches misrepresent holiness by telling women not to cut their hair and to wear ankle-length skirts, that men are supposed to dominate their women and their children of their house. It flat just does not say these things. The hair, yes, is the beauty of women. But the idea is that God doesn't want women to look like men. That's it. He also doesn't want men to look like women. We are distinctive and expose the glory of God through our attributes. And leading the family does not mean abusing the family. The scriptures say specifically not to frustrate your children. True holiness is not about how you appear to the outside world. It is who you are to the outside world. It has less to do with your appearance than it has to do with your actions. Yes, you should not go around provocatively in speech or looks. However, your private thoughts might be worse than how you dress. We are to take all of this into subjection. You know, the problem is that society has made it seem like a crutch to live a life of holiness. But the truth is, it is a privilege, a great and grand privilege. It is a privilege to not be a slave to the sin that corrupted my soul. The sin that would not release me from its grip. Why would I ever want to go back to a life of this disappointment? So what is holiness that I speak of? Holiness is how I love God and people. It is not a list of do's and don'ts. It is a motivational change in my heart. It is that I want to be different because my Father loves me. I no longer want to sin, curse, tempt, or be tempted. It is that my will is to serve God and God's people and not myself. Holiness is that I get my fulfillment, my joy from loving the unlovable people. I get fulfillment and joy out of living for God instead of myself. Yes, there was a day I was not chosen by men. Even today, if I were lined up before others to be chosen for certain responsibility, I do not think I would be the choice of men. I am so glad that in the lineup that God has, my choice to serve Him and to be His puts me in the right standing with Him. I might be a dog to humanity, but I am a soldier to the Father. I might not have the attributes that humanity deems valuable, but I have the obedience of will and the lack of fear that God requires in His army. God is still looking for Gideon's 300. I ask, are you one of those 300? Amen.